Hello, my name is Josh Hirth.
Hello, my name is Josh Solomowitz.
And in today's report, we'll be talking about income inequality and its impact on education and opportunities in America. Income inequality has been on the rise for decades, and there seems to be no end in sight. The U.S. government needs to step in and get these issues under control.
You know, it was one of the hottest topics among politicians and economists. There's been much research done on it. We'll start off by providing key statistics to show the extent of inequality in the country. Let's first take a look at the difference in the incomes between the upper and the lower classes. In the 1970s, the share of income earned by the country's top 10% of the income distribution translated to about 33% of total income. By 2011, that share had grown to a little more than 48%, and last year in 2014, it was around 54%. This means that 400 Americans have more wealth than half of all Americans combined. To summarize, in the past 44 years, the share of the income earned by the top 10% grew approximately 21%, while the lower classes shrunk.
Education can be the factor to significantly decrease the income gap among the two groups by spurring opportunities for economic mobility. Let's think about this logically. Doing well in high school leads to an acceptance into a top-tier university with a multitude of resources and one that prides itself on the success of its students. You take advantage of said resources, whether in the form of grants, internship opportunities, or research opportunities, and you do well in college and land a great job. At this job, you earn a great income and you'll be able to pull yourself out of poverty and hopefully get your kids through school. Some good news is that the U.S. has made progress in making education accessible. In 2011, U.S. News & World Report wrote that nationwide, the number of high school graduates is expected to grow 10% in the next 10 years. They also report that between 1999 and 2009, undergrad enrollment at for-profit schools soared 539%, compared with 32% for public institutions. The annual family income of more than 47% of undergraduates is less than $40,000. According to the National Center for Education Statistics, enrollment in degree-granting institutions increased by 11% between 1991 and 2001. Between 2001 and 2011, enrollment increased by 32%, from 15.9 million to 21 million. Much of the growth between 2001 and 2011 was in full-time enrollment. The number of full-time students rose 38%, while the number of part-time students rose 23%. In 1970, roughly 3/4 of the middle class had a high school diploma or less. By 2007, this share had declined to just 39%. So why has the income gap increased when more people are being educated? The problem is with access. Access to quality education and opportunities are also unequal among those at the top and those at the bottom. We argue that while more people are receiving a higher education, the access to quality education and opportunities are still mainly exclusive to those at the top.
Now let's dive into an analysis of the situation for the lower income class. Lower income students have a more difficult time becoming the star student that colleges and employers seek for a multitude of reasons. Their families lack disposable income for further advancement opportunities such as tutoring, extracurricular experiences, sports, and more. They may also find it difficult to participate in volunteer activities that could significantly help differentiate them in future applications for schools, internships, jobs, or other opportunities because of the necessity to work and provide additional income to the family. Despite the increased availability of scholarships and financial aid, there are still many students from lower income families who are unable to afford an education. There are only about 50 or so universities that are both need-blind and meet the full financial need of their students, which means that either the rest of the schools are not offering viable financial aid or are turning down low-income students due to their lack of money. The following clip talks about just how prevalent the problem of tuition is.
Higher education in America has been very successful for centuries, but now things are changing because the scale and the cost is enormous. We have a product that is so expensive that a lot of people can't pay for it, and they have to go into debt, and it just isn't viable.
The rise in student tuition is unsustainable. We cannot continue to charge significantly more year after year after year without running into some kind of a brick wall.
College tuition has increased more than any other good or service in the entire U.S. economy since 1978.
The inability to afford an education leads to low enrollment and higher dropout rates among the lower class. This is especially true with the current state of higher education, where the tuition costs constantly increase dramatically, alongside the increasing cost of living. This is detrimental to economic mobility since the share of jobs that require post-secondary education has doubled over the last 40 years as jobs require more skills. This means that said students will not have the same employment opportunities available to them. As you can see, the lack of economic mobility is not necessarily due to the person's lack of abilities in many cases. It was due to the person's background and family's low-income status that prevented him or her from propelling forward. Opportunities to these groups are just not the same as those in the upper class.
In comparison, we see the situation for the upper income class has almost no similarities. In fact, their situation is filled with advantages. The most obvious aspect is their access to financial resources. Unlike the lower income class, they're financially sound and can live in areas that receive the highest quality education. Theoretically, they can also afford to attend any college they're accepted to, whether it's tuition free or $60,000 a year, and that's excluding the cost of living expenses. They can afford even with the increase in the cost of living. Because the highest income families are able and willing to pay the full sticker price, schools compete for these students by supplying the services that they desire, such as marketing, recruiting, and improving facilities, among others, which in turn pushes up costs. A cost that these students can afford, unlike those in the lower income group. Beyond the direct benefit of financial stability, this class is also able to afford the cost of other opportunities. This includes extra tutoring for subject areas that the students may struggle in, or that trip to volunteer in Africa to write about in their college applications, or the opportunity to go to Japan to learn a new culture and language to stand out in interviews. These extracurricular activities help the students become the star standout students that the top colleges desire. But let's step back a moment. We should also note that even without being a star student, these students, for the most part, still have the benefit of legacy. That is, the fact that one's parents went to the college will make the student automatically compelling to accept over someone who doesn't have legacy, assuming qualifications are equal. Now, the short-term consequences is the higher quality education remains with those in the upper class. The long-term consequences, as mentioned before, the inability for those in the lower class to move up the economic ladder. Employers want to hire those with the highest quality education, most experience, and from the top-tier schools. The majority of these students will come from the upper class simply because they had had the opportunity to do so. To quote Derek Thompson from the Washington Times, "Even education, the great American equalizer, makes for a poor equalizer. And it's not only because wealthy teenagers are more likely to go to school. Young people born to rich families who don't go to college are 2.5 times more likely to end up in the richest quartile than young people born to poor families who do go to college. Wealth sticks, and nothing enriches like richness."
There are a variety of solutions proposed by economists and politicians about fixing the economic mobility issue in the United States, but this is a very difficult topic. We have developed our own policy proposal that we think is both plausible and effective.
According to a study from the Brookings Institution, increasing education isn't going to do anything to bring down the wages of the real top or address rising inequality focused on the 1%, but it is what's needed to increase the position of those at the bottom. Those are two different problems. The study suggests that improving education does in fact help the economic situation of poor Americans, even though it has little to whittle away at overall inequality in the country.
Let's look at some simple and maybe obvious steps that could be taken to help solve this problem. Decrease tuition costs, increase access, increase financial assistance programs, increase exposure and knowledge of higher education to the lower income classes. While these together help in the short term, a long-term solution needs more attention. One possible policy we propose is for the government to create an official college ranking system of their own, much like those that the U.S. News and World Report and other private organizations create. However, the formula used to calculate the ranking will focus on more than just the quantitative academic indicators such as the SAT, grade point average, and the like. It will also use the available data to focus more heavily on data corresponding to return on investment, affordability, and percentage of first and family college students, just to name a few. The end goal is to indicate the likelihood of propelling students from the lower income class into the higher income class. While the current private ranking systems have a strong focus on endowment and amenities, our new government ranking system will focus on the things that matter most. While we understand the top colleges may remain at the top, we believe that having one comprehensive and official list is a game changer, because the colleges and universities will want to do what is necessary to earn the top ranks on the list, just like most of them do now. Therefore, it will allow the government to realign the interests of college and universities with the interests of the public for the first time in decades.
Wow. Who knew how much income inequality affects our education system?
I had no idea, honestly.
I'm so glad our producer, Professor Gitter, had us run this story.
Me too.
Thank you all for tuning into our broadcast. See you next week for our special on the world's tallest man. Off to Alex for the report on weather. Bye-bye.